money, and he was very powerful. And in fact, he was so powerful that a lot of the times he would go to other cities and he would conquer them. And then they would become part of his kingdom. So that's what he would do. So King Nebuchadnezzar, he decided that he was going to go to Israel, and he wanted to go to the city of Jerusalem. Now we know that in Jerusalem is where God's people lived. But God's people had become very bad. They had started worshiping idols. And you all know what idols are, right?
I don't know what idols are.
An idol is a statue.
It's a statue?
Yes. We don't pray to statues, do we? Because statues can't hear you. Statues can't see you. And so that's what they did, though.
We can see them.
Yeah, we can see them, but they can't see us.
But we can't.
And statues can't answer prayers either.
Because we can't talk.
That's right.
And
So the Hebrews began to, or the Israelites, whatever you want to call them, God's people, they started worshiping idols.
I wanna how I wanna call that is bad people.
Yes, they were bad people. Well, God decided that because they had turned away from him and they weren't praying to him no more, they weren't worshiping him, that he was going to punish them. And so he sent King Nebuchadnezzar to Jerusalem to take over the city. And so,
Take over.
yes, he sent his army, his big army, and they went in there and they captured the people and they made them captives. Or some people would say slaves. And so some of the people that they took from the city were young boys, were like teenage boys.
I think you allowed me to paper.
No, I didn't. I already showed you that one. Stay with me, Madeline. So these young men were some of the best ones. And King Nebuchadnezzar decided that he wanted to have these young boys to work in his palace. And so he told his chief of staff to go and pick out the best ones that they had captured and brought to Babylon, which is where they all lived. And they picked out the ones that were good looking, that were strong, and that were healthy. He only wanted the best of the best.
I'm the happiest kid in the Johnson family.
Yes. And so he picked out these 4 young men. And their names was Daniel and Hananiah and Mishael and Azariah. And these were the 4 boys. And so the king told the chief of staff to help them, that he wanted them to eat the same thing that he eats. And the king ate all kinds of good stuff. He ate pies and cakes and donuts and all that kind of stuff. And he drank lots of wine. And so he said he wanted all these young men to have the same thing to eat that he would eat. Well, Daniel knew that that kind of stuff wasn't good for you. And he went to the chief of the staff and he said, you know what? He said, we don't want to eat those things because God would not like for us to eat all that bad food. He wants us to eat good food like vegetables and fruits.
I actually love carrots in salad.
Well, good. And he also wanted to drink lots of water. Water's good for you too, isn't
I
it?
love carrots in salad.
Yeah. And so that's what Daniel told him. Well, the chief of the staff told them, and so the boys prayed about it. And they asked God to help them to be able to do that. So they went to the one that was in charge of them, and he had told them that he was afraid of the king. And he was afraid that the king would cut his head off if he didn't take care of the boys. And if he didn't feed them right. And he thought that if he fed them what the king gave them, then that would be the good stuff. But Daniel told him, he said, no, that's not the good stuff. We need to eat vegetables and fruits and drink water, not wine. And so the steward of the boys, he told him, he said, well, okay, we'll try that. And Daniel said, this is what we can do. For 10 days, we will eat nothing but vegetables and fruits and drink water. And if after the 10 days we don't look as good as the other boys, whatever they're eating, then we'll stop eating the good stuff and we'll eat the stuff that the king wanted us to eat. So for 10 days, the steward brought them only vegetables and fruits and water. And after the 10 days, he looked at them and he saw that they were healthier looking than the other boys who had been drinking the wine and eating all the cakes. And so he said, all right, this is what we'll do. He said, from now on, you can just have fruits and vegetables. Now the king wanted the boys trained for 3 years to work in the palace. So for 3 years, they were taught all kinds of things. They were taught the language of Babylon, the city they lived in. They were taught about the history. They learned about the science. They learned everything that they could learn. And the best part was that God was helping them. He was helping them to remember all the things that they were taught. So at the end of the 3 years, all the boys was brought before the king. And the king interviewed each one of them. He talked to each one of the boys and he asked them lots of hard questions. And he found out that Daniel and his 3 friends was the only ones who was really smart. And they were healthy looking and they didn't have any blemishes on them, they didn't have any marks, and they could answer all the questions. And he thought, wow, these boys are really smart. And Daniel was thankful that God had helped him to remember everything. And so he put them to work in his palace. And he told them, he said, here they are. He said to the boys, he asked them sometimes advice about things, how to do things. And then he would ask he had magicians. You know what a magician is? Magician is somebody who can do tricks.
Magic tricks?
Yes.
I actually met one at Stacey's Pizza.
Did you?
Yeah.
Well,
I actually had one ball and he had one. He just put a wand through his hand and abracadabra. I had 2 balls in my hand.
wow.
That was some magic.
Yeah, so the king had magicians in his court. And he would ask them questions, but then he would ask Daniel and his 3 friends. And they always had the better advice. So they were even 10 times smarter than the men that was working in the court with them. So they were really good. Now, the thing I want you to get from this story is that even though all the other boys was eating the cakes and drinking the wine, Daniel and his friends, they did something different. They did what was right. So sometimes you have to be different. You need to do what's right and not just because everybody else is doing it. So when God asks you to not cheat, not to be mean to somebody, even if they're mean to you, then that's what you need to do.
We do what our mom and dad says and what God says.
Yes.
He does that. He be mean
Yes.
to me.
Oh,
I
always
be
not
mean.
mean.
I be mean back.
That's because you're sisters. It can't be helped. So that's what y'all want you to get from this story is that sometimes we need to do what's right and not what everybody